live in a world ruled by tyranny, where knowledge is suppressed and ignorance is glorified. A world where propaganda and misinformation travel the airways at the speed of lies. But in the midst of the violence and chaos, a great awakening is taking place. And as the media empires continue to collapse, a new network is forming. A network of truth. A network of courage. A network of awareness. Peace and greetings. You are now tuned into the Network of Awareness podcast radio station, where we examine current events, politics, health, finance, and topics of cultural relevance in America and throughout the world, while bringing you insightful interviews with guests that will both educate and inspire you. And now, your host of the Network of Awareness podcast radio station, Aura the Informationalist.
My aura is a network full of awareness and gifts like Aura, the informationalist.
The content of this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, financial, or other professional advice. The views expressed in this podcast are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views, opinions, or positions of the Network of Awareness's producers, subsidiaries, entities, or any other associated parties.
All right. Peace and greetings, people. Welcome to the Network of Awareness podcast radio show. I'm your host, Aura the Informationalist. And this lovely lady next to me is Dr. Lynn Carey, that some of you may know. But if you don't know, Dr. Lynn, if you could just give a brief intro about who you are and what you do, and we'll get this show started.
Yeah, thanks for having me back, Aura. I love that intro to your podcast. That's just so cool.
Thank you.
So I'm just been a truth seeker my whole life. I'm a chiropractor, author, entrepreneur at heart, and I love to raise the consciousness of others, of the planet. That's just definitely my purpose, my calling.
And it's a great pleasure to have you as the first guest to this We Are Extensions of All That Is series. And for those that don't know, the reason why I titled that is because we are an extension of the divine source where all creation comes from. Some people call it the creator, the most high, God. But there is a force that we all come from, where all creation comes from. And we're an extension of that, just like the animals, just like the trees, the water, and pretty much everything that exists within the cosmos, within the universe, that we can only begin to understand by looking within ourselves, to understand that this whole season 6 is about the light is within you and all around us. And just like in the background is kind of like it's like a portal / matrix system. And scientists and metaphysicists and many other people have discovered that we are living in a 3-dimensional reality, but it is some type of virtual reality where the soul is coming to have this physical experience. But everything that's physical here is a form of energy vibrating on a certain frequency. And only for us to have that experience, because we can't have that experience as that form of energy without these vehicles known as the bodies. This is why I want to do the show, because I think that there's a grand awakening, a great awakening happening all across the planet where people are starting to understand this more. And there's a lot of old belief systems that are being torn down because they were set up to kind of keep the veil over people's eyes and to really take the power away from the individual and give it to some external force that we don't even know how that looks or what that is. And then the external forces that we're looking upon like the old teachers of old, of ancient times, were all teaching us that the power is within us. And that's what we're an extension of. We're extension of a great power, and we get to manifest that power in our and forming our realities here on earth. And it also, I think that a lot of people are starting to realize that it's kind of foolish to think that we are the only type of species of humans that exist throughout the cosmos. It's kind of foolish to think that, but apparently there are people that still think that, and that's quite fine. We can always disagree, can agree to disagree. But I think that the world and the way the universe is showing us things, and that God force is showing us, like, there's so much more to this that has been kept and been kept secret and coveted. And, like I said before, put the veil over our eyes. So let's start off with you and, your spiritual evolution, because even though you discussed some of it, I want you to get deeper into it because we didn't get to go that deep. All right. Now, and I know that you and I talked about the about GACA-19 and the scandemic and all of that. So you are a very open-minded person. You do not go with the status quo mentality, and that's one of the reasons why I like bringing you on my show so much, because I have that connection with you where we're not the type of people to go and just say, "Oh, I'm going to just believe in this or do this because everybody else is." So we stand bold in our truth and our understanding of how we're supposed to live our lives. But I know I said a mouthful, but let's start off with what is your perception of spirituality?
Well, can I tell you, I'm feeling it right now. I have tears in my eyes. I just feel the energy raised so much just listening to you. And I just get so excited about discussing things like this. And I just feel the grace right now so much. This year, 2023, it's funny. I feel like started a whole nother spiritual awakening for myself, like another level or a layer, because the last couple of years, I definitely was in warrior fight mode because of what was happening. And I was on a spiritual journey for a long time. When I first became a chiropractor, I think I had the fight mode because I felt like I was battling the medical world, trying to awaken, like save everybody to awaken, that they heal themselves, and all these things that you think are good for you, all your wellness checks and everything are destroying you. So I felt like, I was so like anti-medical on this fight, anti-jab, all this kind of stuff. And then I went into my bliss state, where I believe that's what everybody's looking for. I call it my grace state, where I experienced the higher consciousness. And I realized this is our natural state. This is what we're all looking for. And I don't know, I felt like I got there kind of by default, not sure how to stay there. And so then my journey was about aligning to that bliss grace state and making that more of my normal, right? And creating my life around that place. Then when we got locked up, I went into warrior mode again because I knew something was very wrong, and everybody was falling into place. I was more afraid of the people who were staying silent and complying than I was about the so-called higher ups who were doing it to us, because if we didn't have the people falling in line, we wouldn't have the issue. So, and it changed my whole life. It literally uprooted everything I was doing, creating my dream reality. It just uprooted everything. So then and I'm like, I've never lived in so much anger and fear, like all this coming up. But then 2023 came around, and I started listening again to more spirituality. I was more drawn into peace again, finding the bliss, starting to see the bigger picture, starting to realize we are going to come out of this, starting to feel like we're reaching a critical mass. And then I started to have like deeper revelations within myself. Old stuff was coming up, but I was able to see it differently, to heal, right? Because we're so multi-layered of just gunk we've been brought up with, probably other lifetimes too. So it's just, I don't know. I feel so clear and so free of labels and free of like what it's supposed to happen. Like I'm just in this state of, maybe it's becoming, but I don't have an attachment as much as I used to. I feel very free right now. Oh, you're muted, I think.
Sorry.
There you
um, I was laughing when you said when we were locked up. I wasn't locked up. I was one of the only people on the road doing like 80 and a 30 in a apocalyptic Tampa Bay area, Florida that I was in at that time. But you said something very revealing about becoming, because when you think about the word human or human, right? There's a lot where that comes from, the human. But also the being part is the part that people seem to forget is you're a human being. And the way I interpret that is like you're the physical experience, you're having the physical experience, but the being is the becoming. And the becoming is what you're learning while in the physical, because that's what we come here for. We have had past lives. One of the things that they took out of the Bible, or that they didn't add into the Bible, let me rephrase that. One of the things they didn't add into the Bible when the Bible was created and authorized, especially by the Roman Catholic Church, because they took out reincarnation. And Jesus talked about that, about reincarnation a lot. So did many other teachers. And I remember listening to a podcast. I think it was the Soul Podcast with Alex. It's a great podcast. And he talked about how convenient to take that out, because if people would realize that they were reincarnating, then it would be harder to control people, because they know that this is just an experience. But when you start putting like fear mongering and you start saying, well, hey, if you don't get it right now, you're going to go someplace else. That puts people in such a state of fear that they become subservient to living a certain way based on what they told they should be doing. And it's something that I saw as a kid, to where it's like, wait a second, there's got to be more to this. And I would have these deja vu moments where I'm just like, wait a second, I felt like I've done this before. Well, that ties into reincarnation. And the being part of the human is kind of like you are being, you are like, you are the spirit or the soul weighs 22 grams. That's already been proven, because when they put people on their deathbed, they have a weighing scale. And when that spirit, when they go, like when you see in the movies, when they take their last breath and they're like, and then their eyes don't move no more. And then they close the eyes, right, in the movies. And they're like, and they say their prayers and the person's gone. The soul is gone from that body, from that vessel. Well, when that transition happens, the scale goes down 22 grams. 22. And mathematics is very interesting in spirituality, because everything is interconnected. Nothing is a coincidence, and us, the being, is not a coincidence. We're just an extension of that heavenly light, that spiritual light, that force energy that we only can begin to understand, that has created everything around us and everything above us too, and below us. Meaning, like, if you look at the earth, whether it's flat earth or whether it's round, there's a lyric from an MC, a rapper, that I used to listen to back in the days, in the late 90s. He had an album called Heavy Mentals, and one of his lyrics, he said, "The earth is already in space." So it's like we already in heaven, so to speak, right? Because the earth is already in space. And I remember listening to that and being like, wow, that makes so much sense. But we're coming here to have an experience, to go back into the very light in which we come from, but which we possess while we're in the vehicles or in the bodies. And more, I've been learning that since my mid-20s, like really studying it up until present day. I kind of veered off to the left, though, a little bit. And I had to bring myself back in. I had to check myself and bring myself back into alignment as to understanding what is and what it's not, or what God is and what God is not. And that journey still continues. And one of the things that I was told is to not have a set belief system, to have a belief system that is constantly evolving, because one thing that you may believe, something that you believed in 2020 or in 2012 may not be something that you believe in 2023 because things were shown to you to prove that to not be true. Just like a lot of people thought that the world was going to end in 2012 based on the Mayan calendar. But then people were like, wait a second, you're interpreting what they were showing completely different. That's not what, that's not what they were talking about. And then, of course, here we are still to this day, but you talk a lot about grace, right? And you said that you felt something as we started this podcast, when we started talking, right? You felt this intense energy. When did you really start honing down on that? Like, when did you start realizing, wait a second, there's something more to my reality that I'm feeling, that I may not be able to see with the naked eye, but I feel it immensely, just like you were feeling that immense energy field inside of you that was bringing tears to your eyes. When did you start coming to that understanding, and how did that come to be?
Well, the thing that you were talking about is the 22 grams of that being, right? That soul or life force that's in us. That's the foundation of the truth that started my whole spiritual journey. I mean, I was looking for something my whole life, but that was the first time I heard truth at 19 years old. It was the chiropractic philosophy. And it was basically, we recognized that what is the difference between a dead body and an alive body? There's a life force, right? However you want to quantify it or call it or name it, we can't. Like, we try to put names because our human mind tries to categorize everything, but there's a life force. And so that was the whole premise of chiropractic, is how do we allow that life force to come through us at 100%? That's the point of the adjustment. That's the point of honoring the body and the symptoms and what it's trying to do, listening to the body, right? So, but when I was in chiropractic school, it was very mechanical for me. It was very, I want to hear the crack of the adjustment. I want to have the symptom go away. I was in so much pain from the spine. I had spinal surgeries as a teenager. I just was really beat up and broken. But then when I got out in this warrior mode, I thought, I'm going to go back to my hometown and change the world with everything I've learned, how we heal. And it became a spiritual journey for me. That's when I started working on people. I realized all the energy that was happening. I'm like, there's something bigger than us here. And also I did the mission trips. I went to Brazil and India, where we just adjusted people for free in these little towns of people that we knew. They asked us to come bring chiropractic there. And it was just so mind-blowing, the amount of energy that we created doing that. And I just felt this bliss. And eventually I got to the point where within 3 years of practice, I just went into this bliss state. It lasted about 18 months. And I was just happy for no reason. It was like falling in love, but there was no other person. I was like, oh, and the problems that I thought I had, you just laugh. Like, it's like you're just silly. It's just like you're just happy. There's no reason. And I realized that's the point of our existence. That's who we are. This is what we're searching for. Every diet, every health practice, every making more money, every finding the next relationship, the next high, the alcohol, the drugs. It's to look for the bliss state, our natural grace state, whatever you want to call it. And I realized we are here to create heaven on earth. It's just about the frequency. It's becoming a master of your frequency and learning that you create your reality and attract everything you need. But that's a practice, right? Because we've been so limited in our thinking, which I think now, after the last 3 years, I realize it's deliberate. I thought before that maybe humans just have to discover it at their own time. But now I realize there was this huge element of really suppressing us as humans. So we don't know that we are source, that we are God. And that was one of the things. It's interesting. I was raised Catholic. My mom won't question anything, such an ignorant Catholic, Italian, old school. But I never believed in the dogma. I just believed in the connection. I wanted the spiritual connection, right? So that wasn't hard for me to give that up. I mean, I went to church on Sundays, but I didn't think God was judging me. I was looking for a connection. And then I dated a guy in chiropractic school who was Jewish. And everybody around me was making this big deal, like, what are you going to do? What if you have to get married to him? And my mind wasn't even there because I was just looking for something bigger in life. But, well, he is Jewish, and how does that work and all this? And I just thought, this got to be the silliest. But how does that work? What do they mean? So I went into that. And when I went into my grace state, I realized, I'm like, wait, everybody got it wrong. Jesus was here to show us what we can do. We can do exactly what he did.
Facts.
The Catholics are worshiping him, or the Christians are worshiping him. He didn't want that. The Jews killed him. They didn't want that either because he was preaching too much truth and freaking them out. And I'm like, that's all it is. I mean, it's just like all the religions fell apart for me. All the health stuff fell apart for me. All these charades fell apart because once you know truth, you can find truth is simple. Then you can start to see it in other places, right? And that's the unfolding of things where you continue your journey.
Let's you talked about the dogma and with your family, especially with your mom, and how you didn't gravitate to that, but you gravitated to the spiritual understanding of it. And I kind of went through similar experiences as a child as well. But do you remember when you first started to realize that the dogma and the way it was being presented to you did not resonate with you spiritually? Do you remember when that first started? Do you have any like recollection of a memory from childhood?
I don't know. I don't think I've ever bought into it. I just kind of went through the motions because I used to just question everything in life. But you know what sticks in my mind? This is the crazy part. I went to an all-girl Catholic school. We would go to confession. Like sometimes we would go as part of the holiday thing. We'd go to confession, right? You got to go confess. Well, a lot of my friends, I mean, this is when I was like 14, 15 years old. A lot of the girls were going in and confessing that they already were having sex and premarital sex and all this stuff. Like they were wild. Like the Catholic girls were the wildest. Like I think it's so crazy. Like we were so suppressed that alcohol, the drinking, the partying, the boys came quick, right? Because it's an outlet. And I remember questioning, I'm like, well, you're going to go in there and tell the priest that you're having sex with your boyfriend, but aren't you going to go do it again? And he's like, well, yeah. And I'm like, well, why are you thinking it's a sin or confessing if you're going to go doing it again? You know what I mean? I'm like, there's such a disconnect here. What the hell are we all doing?
It's funny you brought up confession. I started laughing because I don't know I know you listen to my podcast from time to time, but did you ever hear my story about confession and my experience with it as a kid?
I don't think so.
Okay, so I already did my communion, right? Catholic school. I did I was in the process, I think, of doing my confirmation at this point. I think I did my confirmation at 11. I was late in doing communion and confession. I mean, in confirmation. So I think I was about 11 or 12 years old at the time. And I remember we had a Monsignor, and what was his name? I can't remember his name. Monsignor Mohari or something. I think he was Irish. And then we had Father Dervin. Father Dervin was he was a special dude. And I don't mean that in a good way. But he did do some good things, but he was just weird. So it's my first time going to confession. And it's like, okay, so now I'm going to confession and I'm nervous because I really don't want to do it. So I'm hoping that for some reason I get skipped or something. But as the kids are going, it's like, okay, your turn. And it's getting closer and closer to me. I'm like, oh, shit. So as soon as I'll never forget, Sister Joan came to me, who was one of my teachers. And she was like, Reggie, it's time for your confession. And I was like, I went like this. I went, and she gave me this look. I remember her face. She had like these two buck teeth that were like so big that it go over her bottom lip. And she just looked at me kind of like, what the hell is going on right now? Like, did this kid just wave to me? Like, no, I'm not going. So she asked me a question. She was like, it's time for confession. And I was like, no, I'm not going. And she said, why? You sick or something? Is something wrong? No. I was like, I'm not going to confess my sins to a man that I know sins way more than I do. I'd rather confess my sins to God directly. Got sent to the principal's office.
That's amazing.
Damn, what was her name? I think her name was Mrs. Scanlon or something. And I never forget it. No, that wasn't her name. It started with an S. And I went in front of her in her office. And she's just like, basically, like, she didn't even want to hear it. She was just like, listen, either you go to confession, okay, and confess your sins, or I'm going to call your mother and I'm going to have her come in here and then I'm going to suspend you. So right then and there, boom, that fear, right? Fear of pressure, of having me do something that I didn't want to do, instead of probably respecting what I said. But the fact that I was my mother wasn't my mother left the Jehovah Witness religion to be with my father. And she left Puerto Rico because my father lived with her in Puerto Rico. They lived on the same, like, her family and my mother's family and my father's family literally are interconnected. So his family members are married to my mother's family members.
Gotcha.
So when he left to the Bronx, my mother married another man to get out of her house because my grandfather was so abusive and a drunk, raising 12 kids. And she wanted to leave that environment. So she wound up marrying an older man in the religion that my uncle. See, I always thought it was my grandfather and grandmother. But come to find out, my grandfather and grandmother wanted nothing to do with that religion. It was my uncle, the oldest son out of the 12 or 13 children. I think it was 12 or 13. And he recruited everybody as far as the siblings. So everybody got indoctrinated into that religion. And my mom used that to get out of the house by marrying an older man that she really didn't love, but he was a good man. So she wound up having a kid with him and then went and chased my father, right? But once my mom came to New York, my mom didn't instill religion into me like that. My mom allowed me to do Bible study and stuff like that. And she put me into those groups, but she wasn't there with me. She just wanted to make sure that I get that education. And as I was growing up and reading the Bible, a lot of things just didn't make sense. A lot of things. Like, they created stuff. I'm like, who's the they? Now, some people believe that that's Christ and the angels. Some people believe that that's the Anunnaki, those that came from the heavens.
Right.
Now, that's what I believe, because the day when you take the S, when they took the S out of God, it was always the gods. It was never the God, right? But it's another story for another day, another show for another day. But there were things being revealed to me spiritually as a child that I always felt this presence. I always felt this presence that was going to keep me safe no matter how much trauma I went through as a child. And I went through a lot of emotional trauma. I never was sexually abused. And I would say I was borderline physically abused, but back in the days, we got ass whippings and they were very much warranted. And that's how we were raised. So some people still think that we're a little soft on our children because of that. Like, if we grew up how we grew up, maybe our children would be less soft and have a little bit more backbone. But nobody taught me to think like that. It was just a knowing. Like, I know that this man drinks wine and gets drunk because I smelled the liquor on his breath. You know what I mean? So it's like, I'm already thinking like, this dude, come on. Like, this man is the conduit to God. Like, this is the man that I got to go through to get to God, right? When the God force is in me, just like a lot of Christians believe that the only way to God is through Christ. But that's not what Christ was teaching.
Right.
All right. So the crazy part is that I went back because I didn't want my mother to be called, because I already knew what was going to happen if that happened. And I didn't want to deal with that drama. So you know what I did? I went back, went into the pew or into the, whatever they call it, the confession room. And I was like, I stole $5 from my mom's wallet, which was a lie.
Yeah.
But I said it, and then it was like, do 3 Our Fathers and 2 Hail Marys. And then I sat back down where you put your knees down on those cushions in the pews. And I was just like, blah, 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 blah. Because I knew it was nonsense. And I don't think I ever went back to confession since that day. And it was almost like I didn't have to after that. It was like I don't remember ever going back for the rest of the school year, going back to confession. So it was very interesting that why is it that as a kid I had this understanding that I knew that a lot of this stuff, this dogmatic way of going about spirituality, was a bunch of mumbo jumbo, because I'm experiencing people for who they are. And I'm knowing that there's something else more to what I'm being told. I didn't really have an idea of what it was, but I think this is what it is, Lynn. And then I want you to chime in on this. From my research and study, from when we are born and we're those babies crying, wah, wah, that is the closest we are to that very source of creation that we come from. But through the social conditioning and through the dogmatic teachings and all of the other seeds that are planted into the subconscious mind from our parents, grandparents, society, culture, government, everything, all the institutions of education, all of these beliefs and doctrines and ways of thinking are being imposed onto us, are being put into our mind. Like, this is what you got to do. Don't do this. Don't do that. And we start to get further and further away from who and what we truly are through that conditioning. And I think that the reason I even had that understanding is because I still was having some connection to that. But by the time I was 21, 26, 30 years old, all that's out the window. My belief system, I'm trying to find the answers. And through trying to find the answers, my mind is believing something to be true, only for that spell to be dispelled and to be debunked. I've gone through a lot of debunking in my life of things that I thought was true and be like, oh, that's not true. That's not true. To the point where I was like, damn, there's a whole legacy of lies here that I have to debunk within the social conditioning and the conditioning that I received as a child, to be like, wait a second, I got to do away with all this nonsense and start fresh from a fresh new plate or a fresh new palette of thought that's coming from within instead of from an outside external force. So what do you think about that? Because I know you shake your head when I was talking about being connected more spiritually as a child and then straying away from that through conditioning.
I have so many thoughts. You say what you're saying one sentence and I have like 5 ideas. You say the next sentence, I got 5 ideas. I'm like, so like, oh my gosh, there's so much. That's how I raised my son. No interference. Because I learned when I discovered chiropractic, the medical world already destroyed me, along with all the dogma of the religion, my family, and everything else. Chiropractic opened me up to a whole nother way of thinking that I knew there had to be something else. And it showed me there was. I guess there was always this innate that we are connected to God's source when we're born. And it's there, but we don't have verbiage for it because the people around us are telling us it has to be this way. Well, once I discovered chiropractic and started questioning everything, I realized that everything I was taught I had to undo. And all the stuff that were my problems was because of all the bad programming I had growing up and the survival skills that I had to acquire to deal with it all. So I knew also, I mean, it was besides that perspective and also doing natural healing or honoring the body instead of mutilating the body like what the medical world does, I knew I didn't want any interference for my son. Some people would look at it as spoiling. To me, it wasn't. I had a voice my whole life. Nobody listened to me. And I was right. I knew I had answers. What I was questioning should have been questioned, but I was told I was crazy. And I just stopped talking because I realized nobody got it. I didn't want that for my son. I wanted him to always have his voice. So from a natural healing perspective, he was born at home, no jabs. He was in fact circumcised. He's never even been to a medical doctor except to get the birth certificate signed because the midwife wasn't allowed to do it. And he never had to go to a medical doctor. He never needed it. He always was taught to honor his body. I mean, natural healing. And he's never had problems. He's always well. And then I always ask them, well, how do you feel about that? What do you think? What are you in the mood for? Even diet. Like some people, I would see helicopter moms like, got to get rid of all the candy, got to get rid of all the junk. And I'm not saying it's not bad, but here's the thing. We live in this reality. I see kids who are raised like that. Then they go to a party where all the junk is and they gorge themselves because they're so forbidden. You can't forbid things. Let everybody explore and experience, because then when you're allowed to experience everything, you self-regulate. So I always let my son just self-regulate. right? So I know for sure that's why I love to be around kids, because they're still the pure light. There's until they get, you know, beat up on too much from society, have told them they can't do these things. But if we were just allowed to come in and be who we are and have our pure thoughts and really just live our lives naturally, we would be in that high vibe. So it's like all the societal stuff is what suppresses us down into all this struggle and disease and poverty and all these problems. It's because we're not living in our natural state. So my whole goal was to just keep my son no interference, and he might know better than me. I learned from him. I'm like, let me see what he does, because that's going to teach me, because he's still connected closer to source than I am. He hasn't had all the programming. So that, and then I'm just undoing the programming, and I question things. Well, what would it be like to be natural? Like, that's how we look at the body. Well, what's the body trying to do? Do I really need to cut it out, drug it, or suppress that symptom, or do I need to let it run its course? There's a thinking there. You start to think, you can apply that to anything. What's the politician really saying? What's the money flow trying to do? Well, you can apply that thinking. You just question it. Where's the natural flow? Where's the truth? So that's kind of how I apply that in my life.
You brought up something interesting about the self-regulating, right? And teaching your son to just don't prohibit or limit him from his experiences, because I believe that if you play with fire, you'll get burned, but sometimes you need to get burned. So do you understand why it's not good to play with the fire, right? Because it's one thing for somebody to tell you something, but it's a whole nother thing to experience it. Just like with the whole narcissism series thing that I do. I didn't really understand. Like, I dealt with narcissists before throughout my life. I had a 23-year friendship with one, and I kind of knew that, but it was a whole different experience of actually being in a relationship with somebody who's a narcissist, like an intimate relationship. And that really opened up my eyes, and I had to get done dirty in order to know what that feels like and understand that, hey, now I know what it looks like, what I don't want to do, and I can self-regulate to the point where I can start attracting what it is that I do want, because I have a better understanding of what I don't want. And sometimes we have to go through that. Most of the time we have to go through that, because that's how we evolve. We have to have experiences. We came here to have those experiences. And that's another thing. Let's talk about that. Because when we come from the God force, when we come from creation, we're coming here to have a physical experience that we can't have in the state of that spiritual energy. That's not how things flow. Everything is infinite love, unconditional love in the spirit realm. We're not going to be able to understand duality unless we're in these bodies. We're not going to know what it's like to feel emotions of depression or guilt and all these other things. Low level vibrations, but we have to experience them. Just like we can experience the high vibration too. So that way, when we go back, we can ascend into a higher form of what we are already, a better understanding of that. And that's what I've been learning for a long time. I strayed away from it, but I'm starting to come back to it in a way that is so profound, Lynn, that I can't even really explain it in words. But it's being shown to me with experiences that, the Most High speaks to me mostly in my dreams and through people. And when I go through certain phases and stages of dealing with people, so much is revealed to me in just the smallest to the most significant conversations that I have with people, how they approach me, how they treat me, the things they say to me, and all of that. And that's what's bringing me to where I'm at now. I don't believe that the whole network of awareness thing was a coincidence. This is definitely my purpose. Why do I believe that? Because I was told, and I had a spiritual rites of passage experience with my godfather, who was a medicine man. And it was revealed to me that I was going to be a messenger for the creator. Now, here in my 40s, my mid 40s, I'm like, there's no question that what was revealed to me at 18 years old has now manifested itself into a physical reality, and it's serving its purpose, and that purpose is serving me as well. And a lot of people, they get so they have this, you know, they have the you know, oh my God, like I can only see this much. You know what I'm saying? And they're not opening themselves up like this. And a lot of times when they get opened up to a little bit of this, they get so scared because of their programmatic or socially conditioned ways of thinking, they immediately go. And it's like, oh, I want to be closed in because I'm too fearful of exploring the unknown. And then they limit themselves, like you mentioned, having those limited belief systems that people in our family we grew up with, knowing that, wait a second, why am I being limited when everything that's being shown to me is that it's unlimited? There is no limit. The only limit is the limit that you put on yourself. Just like with your injuries. If you had a limited belief system, you would have never healed from those. You would probably be on like 10 different pharmaceutical medications right now. And you'd probably be dead.
Probably.
Or messed up. You'd be jacked up. Real jacked up. Right? Because holistic treatment compared to the Western civilization medicine is like night and day.
Night and day.
And it's in that same difference is in the religions, in spirituality.
That's right.
A lot of when they took out mysticism from the teachings of Christ, everything got categorized as witchcraft. Everything. Now, granted, there is witchcraft. It's real. But there's a lot of things that are not. There's a lot of things that are just truth to who we really are. But when you take mysticism out of the spiritual teachings, oh, you can control anybody. And that's what we experience it to this day. Now, I don't talk about the Hamas thing with Jerusalem. I don't talk about that. But you kind of see how things are imposed on us and projected on us for us to gravitate to. It's like 1 minute, everybody's like on the scandemic. Then it's like, what was the other thing that people, the economy. The economy's going to crap, this and that, fear. Now, just like that, just through a couple of images, a couple of news reels consecutively, repetitively going on 24 hours a day, the big talk right now is this thing going on with the Hamas in Jerusalem, right? It's big talk. And it's...
Can I tell you, though, it's very simple. It's the same people, the same
right.
Dark energies that did the scamdemic, the financial crashes, all the wars. It doesn't matter what country. Pick a country. It's the same elite at the top, puppeting everybody. So if you see people raising a flag for a country, I'm like, they still don't get it. We, the people, all civilians of every country need to stand up and say enough is enough and overthrow these damn people who are trying to project this evil. That's it. It's very simple. But when you're still buying into, I got to support one side, you're raising a flag for one side, whether it's Ukraine, whether it's Israel, whether it's Hamas, you don't get it. It's the same people starting every crisis that humanity is going through because they want control. And that's how they keep us in fear and survival mode. But when you come out of that, see, this is the chip I never had. You know how the people you say, like, the people are like this, they don't want to see. And I get that because this was my biggest frustration point in practice. I'm like, these people don't want to hear what I have to say. They just want to go get the pill. They just want to go be fixed. They don't want to do the inner work. I have no tolerance for this crap. I don't want you to come in and tell me your same small talk story every week or every month. Like, I'm bored. I want to grow. You know what I mean? Like, I never played there. I don't understand those people, which I understand that's like half the population, right? But I don't relate. I don't understand how you want to stay in that small world. I was in so much pain growing up thinking this is all there was to life. And my mother would be like, well, this is the way it is, and I'm your mother. And I'm like, I didn't ask to be born. I was pissed. I didn't want to be here. I thought, this is hell. This sucks. And don't make me feel guilty. I want to get out. So until I started finding truths, I'm like, oh, this is so much better. Oh, thank God. I wasn't crazy. Oh, we can create our own reality. We're here to create heaven on earth. We don't got to wait to die to go to heaven. Do you know what I mean? But people don't want to
Right.
know. I'm like, you want to stay in your pain and your ignorance? For what? Why wouldn't you want to look? I can't comprehend it. I still can't comprehend it. 30 years later, I can't comprehend it. Explain to me, why do people want to stay in the nonsense?
A lot of it is lack of self-discipline. I see it so much with people. They don't have the discipline to change. It's so much easier to complain about something than to actually do something about it so that you don't have to talk about it anymore. It's done. And I see it a lot, especially with when we talk about medicine, right? And people's health. People, instead of actually doing the work holistically, instead of fasting for 30 days. Oh, I don't know if I can't eat for 30. Oh, you can. You can. There's plenty of people that have done it, right? Not just Jesus. Plenty of people that have overcome cancer, thyroid, fibromyalgia, Crohn's disease, you name it. People have beaten it and killed it with fasting. People have killed it with just eating fruits and vegetables. By the way, speaking of that, I've become more vegetarian now. So I changed my diet about just about 2 months now. And I got to tell you, Lynn, it's been amazing. I've lost 25 pounds in 2 months. And I've noticed that my skin is different, even though I'm battling something with my skin right now. But my skin is great, and there's a certain energy that I have now where I have not put any artificial sugar in my body, and I don't know how long. None. And it's done wonders for me. I mean, it's like amazing, but it's like it takes discipline. It's like you got to do the things that you don't even like to do when you need to do them. You got to stay doing that, you know? Like the other day, I saw some ice cream. And I was so tempted to eat that ice cream, Lynn. But I knew that if I do that, I might go back and trigger something to where all this momentum and all of this progress that I've come to will just go away like that. So I just took one little teaspoon of the ice cream. I was like, nah, I'm good. I'm good, because the way I'm living right now, I know that artificial sugar is not good for me. And it's not going to get me to where I need to be. And spiritually, I need to grow. And the way I have to do that, I have to cleanse my temple so that all of that God force energy that can flow through me flows through me fluidly with no interruption, because that sugar will interrupt it. It's done it plenty of times. Because I would be tired before I started my diet and eating habit change. I was tired by 2 or 3 o'clock. I would start being tired around about now. Like you would start seeing me go like this, Lynn, in our conversation, I bet.
Wow.
But now I'm wide awake. Why? Because I don't have any sugar in my body. No artificial. The only sugar that I have in my body is from the apples, the oranges, the bananas, and all the other fruits, the cranberries, and all that other good stuff. That's the only sugar that I put in my body. But I just wanted to mention that. But, going back to like self-discipline, I'm pretty sure that for you, in order for you to break out of these molds that you was raised in, they had to take a lot of self-discipline to be bold enough to do that. Because you had said this to me earlier about a conversation you and I had offline about changes that I'm making with my life. And you was like, most people won't do that. Most people will not take a leap of faith for their well-being. Most people won't pursue the truth that is being given to them by that higher force that's given to the higher self, meaning the spiritual self. Most people want the pill. They want the quick fix because they don't want to put in the time and effort for transformation. They want to see transformation like the microwave age. They want to press the button, put it for 1 or 2 minutes, heat it up and eat it. Not knowing that by doing that, all of that radioactivity has now destroyed every single nutrient in the food you're about to eat. So what you're about to eat has no substance and no life. Whereas I rather eat the kale without microwaving it, eat it nice and fresh, and I'm putting life into life. You know, I'm eating to live, not living to eat. So I know I said a lot there, but
I have some things to add. So for me, it became more about once I got to my gray state, I was always very disciplined, but this was part of the problem. I believe the discipline was causing a lot of my pain because I'm a freak. Like, I won't stop until it's done. I was almost the other extreme, perfectionist.
Perfectionist.
Told me to work out every day to reach a certain goal. I was there. I didn't care how I felt. I had to get it done. I couldn't relax unless it was off my list. I'm a list person. I like to scratch it off and get it done. I don't rest. When the gray state came in, I realized the pushing is keeping me in that, right? The judgment. But I also, all those judgments, I kind of fell into an alignment with my body where I lost about 10 pounds. Not that I had a weight to lose, but I realized it was the emotional stuff. And then I just stayed there. And I crave natural things. So now I'm in my natural cravings. Like, it's not a discipline for me to eat. What do I feel like eating in the moment? It might be good, it might be bad, but then I self-regulate. So it's now I'm about how do I allow, what's my highest joy right now? So for me, it's not really suffering anymore. It's like, the discipline's a hard word. Like, sounds like you're depriving yourself. Whereas when you're allowing, what do I really want to enjoy right now? When you allow yourself more joys, I think you go into a natural alignment with your source. I think it's following the joy. And I had to do that because I was not taught to look at joy at all. I was raised with the work hard mentality, no pain, no gain. But it was destroying me because I took it to an extreme. I was very disciplined. So I had to learn to allow and let go and learn to have fun, learn to be happy. Oh yeah, I'm in this struggling in the mind chat, monkey mind. You know, how am I going to figure this out? Oh, stop. Allow for inspiration to come in. You don't have to get it done right now. Wait for the inspiration and then act. So it's a much more natural flow. And I think that, we don't have to be in so much pain and self discipline, not self-discipline as much as deprivation, right? Or the struggle. Move ourselves more into the joy and allowing and alignment.
When I didn't eat that ice cream, I forgot to tell you that I ate 3 tangerines and I had some natural sunflower seeds that have no salt, and they were so good. And I was whatever craving I thought I had was filled, but it was filled with good food instead of if I would have ate a half a tub of ice cream.
Yep.
And then felt like shit afterwards, right? I would have that sugar would have did something.
But when you're in your alignment, you don't want to eat the whole half a tub of ice cream. Do you know what I mean? Like 2 bites usually is enough. And then you're like, oh, I can't eat that. Like you lean more towards healthy stuff. Like, you're watching people drink, like or if they order like a diet soda and they're like, oh, like the chemical. Can't you just taste the chemical? But I'm sensitive to smells of the products, like everything. Like, you start wanting things that are more pure or in alignment or natural. It's a vibration. You just naturally go to that when you're more in alignment.
Yeah, I had my friend was smoking a cigarette, and she wants to stop and stuff, and I keep telling her like I was like, I don't know how you do it. But one day I was like, you know what? Let me take a pull of that cigarette. She's like, for what? I was like, I just want to try it. It was a Newport. And Lynn, I took one little puff. I literally vomited. Okay. And I was just like, ugh. And I was like, listen, if I ask you to smoke like your cigarette ever again, I was just like, don't let me do something that stupid again. It was so disgusting. And I can't even really tell. Maybe it was just a curiosity because I've smoked cigarettes before. I was never a big cigarette smoker. It was something I would do when I drink or whatever, or on other drugs. But it was never something that I would want to do just by itself. And then I just took that one pull, and it was disgusting. I mean, literally, like all my like my insides came up. It was just nasty. And it was just like, how can, and then you say to yourself, like, how can you smoke 5 or 6 or 7 or 10 of those a day? It makes no sense, but we become conditioned.
Well, and people look for that because they're looking for that's their how they let go.
Their
That's their
coping mechanisms too.
and let go. But can you imagine how disconnected they are if they're putting all those toxins in their body and thinking that's letting go when they can
Right.
learn to do it without, but they're just not there. But that's how they let go. I mean, that's how when I used to drink, I couldn't let go until I would go party. I was so wound up and getting everything done and my perfectionist, and I'd go party and drink my face off, didn't remember the night. But like I needed to do that. Now I can barely handle a glass of wine. It like messes me up.
What type of drunk were you, Lynn? I'm just curious.
Angry.
Angry. Oh, you was one of those. Wow.
I'd be carried out of the bar.
You start fights.
Oh yeah. Yep. Because I had so much suppressed inside of me. I was angry at the world. I was pissed off that this is how life is. I was so much struggle inside of me. And I didn't want to be here. And so it would just come up when I would drink.
So you was an angry drunk. Wow, that's amazing. And did it come to a point where your friends would want to stop hanging out with you? Like they didn't want to ask you to go out with them anymore? Because I had friends like that. It was like, no, I'm not going out with you because you're going to get me into problems.
My friends were just as nuts. So they were just as crazy. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So
I think I had a boyfriend that I embarrassed a lot because I was always picking fights and stuff. And I look at that, you know, he wasn't as wound up as I was. But my friends, I mean, okay, so I had a good friend who was a partier with me. But then she decided that she was going to take the mainstream road and decided that she's just going to get married by age of 30 and have her baby and do the whole house in suburbia and white picket fence. And she just cut me out because I questioned everything. I didn't want that. I wanted to know what a life looked like, and that wasn't it to me. So I was too wild for her. And I know we just stopped because she'd be crying to me when she was drinking that she didn't want to go get married. I'm like, well, why are you? But in her mind, she had to go do all these things. And she cut me out because I didn't go down that path. So that was interesting to watch that or to be a part of that experience.
Interesting. And when did you give it up, though? When did you give up the alcohol?
I didn't really give it up. I stopped partying probably once I had the gray state. I just didn't need to do anything anymore. I don't know. But then I was looking for how do I live a life? You know, I'm like, if people aren't drinking on the weekends and partying, what do you do? I was questioning that because I didn't really have anybody around me that was actually living a life that I saw that I want, you know?
Right.
But then I did drink, but I was happy. It wasn't like to escape. It was just, I could enjoy it. And then I realized I would have like a glass of wine at night with like some cheese and crackers. I thought that was like, I enjoyed that for a little bit. Like I would do wine tastings, try different wines. And then I realized I can't do this either. Like it didn't feel good in my body, you know? So I just kind of got to the point where I'm good. I'd rather not have it.
Yeah, I think I stopped drinking alcohol around 32 years old. My body started rejecting it. I started having allergic reactions where every time, whether it was one drink or 5 or 6, I would get like a mild case of liquor poisoning the next day where I would just vomit until I was vomiting the acid lining in my stomach. And then I was just like, oh, we're done. I'm like, I can't even do this no more. I can't even do it even if I wanted to.
Right.
You know, now I can drink liquor once in a while and I'll be just fine, but it's not really my thing.
Right.
You know, it's just, I've gotten to the point where it's just like being on a natural high is exciting. It's addictive, you know, just being connected.
The alcohol, it really has to be in the right place, right time, because otherwise it lowers my vibe. I'm in such a high state naturally that alcohol is going to lower and bring me down. Not many people have reached that place, I don't think, because usually it's the alcohol lets them feel higher.
I never got to ask this question for you, but I'm going to ask it now, considering we are an extension of all that is. And for those that are listening, tuning in, this is a new series that Dr. Lynn is the first guest for, which is we are extensions of all that is. What is the all that is? It's the creator, the creator of all creation. And we are just an extension of that creation for the creator to have that experience through the observer, so to speak, us being the observer, the spirit or the soul. Can you, if you want to, can you talk about a supernatural experience that you've ever had in your life? Have you ever had one? Have you ever had something happen to you that just, it's like something out of a movie that happened to you, like maybe a close encounter with death or anything that you were just like, wow, what was that all about? And it was hard to explain, but you knew it was something meaningful and spiritual. Have you ever had anything happen like that?
Never had a near-death experience, but I feel like I became close to death when my dad died when I was 12. So that took the fear away for me because I felt like he was on the other side waiting for me. So I never had fear of death after that. Then I really went through a near-death experience, I guess, in the sense of my spinal surgeries. I mean, it was pretty dark time. But yet at the same time, I remember being in the hospital bed thinking, well, this is better than my life. At least I get a break from whatever they're telling me that is, because I was exhausted. Then I think Brazil, when I was in Brazil, I went 3 years in a row when we did those mission trips. We were having some pretty crazy experiences, just the synchronicities, just the high vibe. It was like we were all sitting there like we were high and drunk, but we were not on anything, like blissed out of our minds. But then when I would go back to my hometown, I felt depressed because I didn't know how to take that vibe with me. And then it's interesting, my last trip, I was supposed to fly back on September 11th, 2001, right into Pennsylvania on American. But they mixed up. I got so sick that year. Bug bites, really sick, throwing up, just tried to get through the 13-hour flight back. And they mixed up our flight. We had to fly back on September 10th. Little did we know what was going to happen the next day. Got home and I was just in this like coma because my body was so shut down. For 7 days, I was like expressing symptoms heavily. 911 happened. And then I ended up having my bliss experience. I had a healer come in my office, say, you have all this darkness on you. And that's how I felt. The symptoms went away, but I felt like I had all this darkness on me. And I didn't know how to say that. Like, I didn't know what that meant. But she told me that. And I'm like, I did not tell her that, but that's what I've been thinking. And she just said, take salt baths and tell the darkness to go to the light. Light a white candle for like a week. I did it. And I'm like, well, that's easy enough, and here's somebody who read my mind, didn't tell her. And that's when I went into my bliss state. And it lasted for like 18 months. And that was an out of body, definitely experience. But I was walking around normal and just feeling like everything's great. Like I was in this magical world, just so happy. And it got a little deeper each quarter. Like it was like quarterly. And then I started to realize, I'm like, okay, I don't feel like I'm free in my life. I want to work on my financial freedom. I want to work on building a life. I want to expand myself from this practice and my personal, like family life, this hometown. Like I needed something bigger and I didn't know what that looked like. And so I started that journey, but I started also learning how to integrate I started connecting dots on what happened to me. How do I stay like that? Like, how do I get back to that state? Those kind of things. So that was like the next leg of the journey.
So what do you think, like, because, you learn a lot from your son. I learn a lot from the younger generation myself all the time. What do you think is happening right now? Because, you and I were talking offline about how we're feeling this shift of consciousness. We're really seeing things coming into the fold. So can you talk a little bit about what your experience has been like as far as how paradigm shifts are happening and dimensional portals are being revealed now to us in this reality that we're living in, and kind of like some of the transformational experiences that you've been having as of late?
I'm definitely aware of other terrestrial or aliens, I don't know, other life force. And I'm definitely open. It just makes sense to me now. I mean, I didn't engage it. I didn't deny it then, but it didn't apply to my life. Now I feel like that's where we're going. Like, I feel like there a lot of benevolent beings are helping us earthlings through this time, because I think they know a higher way of living, and they're waiting for us to come out of that so we can interconnect and interact. And I think there's technology that will transform humanity that's being suppressed. I do think we're coming into all that. And I'm watching it unfold. And it's interesting because I'm watching what my son's going through. You know, he's 17. So the height of the lockdowns would have been his high school years. He's homeschooled, but he really lost a lot. He lost a social life. Even our homeschool group ended up being pretty in a coma, which was sad. They didn't meet. They were big into masks, and we didn't do that. You know, it was just scary how many zombies were around us, really. I mean, it takes my breath away thinking about the experience I had. But he never really got a life back. And I'm like, well, you know, he didn't really want to go to school, because I always gave him that option. He tried it in grade school and he had a good experience, but I always just gave him options, just try different things. He never had this growing up. He always had interests, different things, always happy. Now he's gone through this, like, he doesn't have interest. He doesn't know what to do. He's looking for a social life. It's kind of been like in a stuck place since the pandemic. But I said to him, I'm like, you know what? Because you came for this new reality we're coming in for. Like, you could go busy yourself right now with stuff, right? What the mainstream does. School, got to go work hard, whatever. He has a job, you know, like, go through that struggle. Like, my first nature is like, oh, I got to push him to be something, do something, pick his career, all this crap. I'm like, no, it didn't help me out at all. That just interfered. So I'm like, just be. You're being prepared for the next phase. It's not here yet. I think we're entering a new world. We're not at critical mass. And in the beginning, you know, when he would be online, he would feel the pressure, because he never had jabs. He used to feel like he used to see some talk about people who weren't, like it was negative. Being homeschooled was weird. Well, look in the matter of 3 years how all that changed. Now we're like the pioneers. Oh, no jabs, homeschool. That's the cool thing now. I said to him, did you ever think in your lifetime, in a matter of 3 years, it would go from weird to the odd ones out to now that's more the mainstream thinking? It almost takes my breath away a little bit. I'm like, wow, that was really a quick change. I'm like, what he's looking for, I know isn't here yet. I'm like, you're being prepared for something. So you got to learn to sit in the stillness, sit in the boredom right now until it shows up. You could force an interest, but I'm like, you know what? I say just allow. Just trust. It's all unfolding, and you're being prepared for what the next stage is. So that's a different thinking though for me, to honor that, because I was always got to go get it done, got to strive for the next thing. So I'm really not putting that on him, because I don't feel like that's right.
Does he meditate?
No.
Okay.
And here's the thing. He has been raised with all this stuff. Like, what we talk about is his normal. You know, like, that's the funny part. Like, I had to go on a search for all these things, right? And practice them. He was just, this is all normal to him. Like, our kind of conversation is a normal conversation. He doesn't always find other people who think like him, but that's the normal for him. Like, even like, he had a headache. I remember he was going through headaches, and he's like, I'm like, well, do you want an adjustment? Most he's had is ever Advil. Like, do you want something? He's like, no. He's like, I just need to go relax my mind. Like, that's his normal. He knows. He goes, I need to drink more water. Like, he figures it out. He had like an ear allergy. And I'm like, well, put the oil in the ear. He's like, no, just let it do its thing. And I go, but it looks gross. He's like, no, but every time I put the oil, it's interfering with what my body's trying to do. He goes, just trust me. Like, a month later, it finally like cleared up. All the scabs fell off and the skin's like perfect. And he didn't do anything. He just let it be. And he's like, see, and we were interfering with it. Like, the kid thinks different. Like, he says stuff to me, and I'm like, you're not from this world. Like, people are going to look at you like, what the hell? You know?
Now, do you meditate?
I sit quietly, not in intentional meditation. I like to feel my energy, balance my energies. I'm looking more to feel my source inside than to be distracted with the outside stuff. And I visualize things that I would like to bring in. So I do that a little bit, not for long, but I have been doing that pretty regularly every day.
Well, that is you're doing a form of meditation. You're looking from within, you know?
Yeah.
And finding peace of mind through that, because that's pretty much there's different ways to go about it, but that's the ultimate goal, is to to go to not look at to not find try not to find things outside of yourself, but really just go deeper into who you are and what you are, and understanding that you are just an extension of all that is. You are one with everything. That's one thing that I'm coming more and more to understanding. It's like that light that I am in, or the light that is that I am a representation of or an extension of. It's everywhere. It's all around me. One of my favorite video games is Assassin's Creed, and every time you start a board, the board is nothing. It's blackness, and then all of a sudden, all these electrical lights, just like you see in the background here, they just start to formulate and pixelate a board, and people and sounds and everything. And that's very much how we live. We're
That's
just
right.
we're like video games. We're like a program of something that's playing itself out. And that's how I see things. Like especially like when I'm seeing how people operate in groups, whether it be in person or online, I feel like I'm watching a video game.
Yeah.
Everybody has their programming. And it's like clockwork. And you see it in the movies too, where they show the person waking up, having their bacon and eggs with their bread, a cup of coffee, and then they show you it again. It's like the eggs, the bacon, frying, the cup of coffee. They go, they get in their car, they get their paper, they drive out, they wave goodbye to their wife, or the wife waves goodbye to them, and they go about doing the same thing repeatedly over and over again. And he's like, that's a program. That's like a program in a video game that you would see, whether it's Nintendo or some of the newer games now. And some of the newer games now, like you can't tell if it's not reality because they're it looks so real,
Right.
And I'm so grateful that I understand that I am an extension of all that is, because that's helping me to grow and to learn what I came here to learn in the first place, and not being distracted by all of these things that other people are saying that this is what it is, but can't prove it to be true.
Can I just say right there, I call my life before my gray state and after my gray state. Before my gray state, life was really hard. Like the dark times would be consuming. Like I knew you could probably get through them, but once I found the gray state, then I'd have dark times and I'm like, oh, I'm just clearing stuff. It didn't overtake me because I knew who I was at that point. I knew my vibration. I knew myself as source. And I knew this was a perfect unfolding for me to for it to get even better. I'm like, oh, once I get through this, it's going to be even better. So I don't even, like it's before grace and after grace. I always say that I'm so grateful I had that experience because it just made life bliss.
So, I want to wrap it up pretty soon. So let's why don't we have you talk about some of the things that, like, let's bring this show into conclusion. Is there anything that you want to let the listeners know about how what you've been experiencing, or things that you see are happening, or things to come? And not so much like a prediction or anything, but more just like to sum up this show as far as like what you're feeling right now, presently, and where you see things going for yourself and for the world as a whole, from your perspective.
I think the conversation we're having is going to become the norm. I believe people are going to wake up to that they are source. And I really believe we're going to see heaven on earth. And I think it's going to be in our lifetime. I think we're on the brink of it. I know it looks chaotic and sometimes I get frustrated, but there's too many things going on right now that are breaking the matrix on so many levels. And I cannot believe, like, I don't even know if I thought that I would ever see this. I thought I would just be living in my own little happy bubble. But I believe everybody's going to come into this awareness. I believe that's where we're heading. And I think it's going to be amazing. And I think we're going to find a new way of life. I think all this struggle, all this suffering, all this stuff is going to be out the window, and we're going to start creating from joy. And in our natural states, and just entering the gray state, for me, I believe that's our natural state. If we had the population in the gray state, oh, forget it. It's going to be bliss on earth. Like, we're going to find, because when you're in your bliss state, you're not going to harm anybody. You're not going to harm yourself anymore. What you're inspired to do is end up your inspiration and your joy ends up just being a natural ripple effect to affect and lift up millions of other people. It's natural order, right? It's not like you're successful, so you're taking from somebody else. No, your success is lifting up all these people. It's natural order, right? And I think I do believe we're going to see free energy. I believe we're going to see back to clean food again, clean air. We're going to clean up this world. That's where we're heading. How long it takes, I don't know. I do think it's going to be in our lifetimes. I really believe we're here. I think we're on the brink of it. I feel it for myself a lot. And I'm grateful because I told you the last few years I was really in a way, and I didn't like it. And I was just pissed off again and ready to, these people, I had no tolerance for the zombies. Now I'm having a little more compassion, a little more peace again about that. I'm not saying I'm not still a little triggered if I see somebody wearing a mask or, the craziness, the propaganda.
I know you are. I know you. And even if you don't say nothing, your face says it 1,000 words. You're just like, oh, this idiot.
I know. But
Like,
no judgment, I'm not gonna lie. But I'm excited for what's to come. And I just, maybe it wasn't as fast as I thought it would be, but I do believe it's a natural unfolding. Just like all of a sudden where not being jabbed, going to homeschool, like just in those 3 years, how that became weird to accepted and normal and kind of cool. It's going to be a natural shift where it's like, how the internet came in and just kind of gradually took over everything. That's what we're heading into with consciousness. It's going to just a natural unfoldment. Next thing you know, that's going to be the new norm. I really believe that. And I believe this evil is going to come down. It's just, it just can't survive in that high vibration.
Yeah. And all of the half truths are getting the other half to the truth now.
That's right.
Yeah. And I think that's why religion is losing its spell. The spell of religion is starting to dissipate out of the subconscious mind of people, because it's like there's truth, but it was a lot of half truths and a lot of lies. And now people are gonna be like, wait a second, this don't make sense. This don't make sense. Let's make it make sense.
We need people thinking again,
Yes,
and then getting back in tune to what their source is telling them, because that's the part they're supposed to play. Get in tune with yourself again. Follow your dreams. Follow your happiness. That's the soul's journey. Even if you come up on obstacles, that's how we learn to create, by working through the duality, releasing yourself from the limiting beliefs, releasing yourself from the fears. You got to do that inner work. But it's worth it. You're here to follow your joy.
I like that. You're here to follow your joy. And can you, before you go, there's two things I want you to do. One is, let's talk about what does the gray state mean? What does that mean?
Grace.
Yeah,
State.
the gray state. You say it a lot, but I want you to explain it to what it means to you, so that people understand what the gray state is.
Well, the gray state is definitely beyond verbiage. So for me to do the best I can to put verbiage to it, I would say it's like falling in love, but there's no other person. You're just in love with yourself, with life, with everything in front of you, even if it's not perfect, because you see perfection in everything. You feel your connection to the earth. You feel your connection to every other person. You realize we're all one.
Yes.
We realize that we are here. We could do exactly what Jesus did. He was just showing us what we could do. You realize, oh yeah, that makes sense. That's the grace state. I believe it's like spirit comes over and you realize you are spirit with all this wisdom and power, and in an aligned way, right?
Right.
You are God, but you feel it, and in a way that you're benevolent and you're happy and you're joyful, and you don't need outside stuff to even make you that way. That's just your state. That's what I call the grace state, and I believe that's what you're communicating.
Okay, so with that being said, any updates or any info? Just take your time to share any information, any updates of what you got going on, or where people can get your information, get your books, get everything that you're doing, and give them that information. Even though I will be putting it in the description box.
Yeah. So I have a website, creatingmydesiredlife.com, and you can find my book there, or get on my emailing list, or ask me a question. I just saw that yesterday I was told that my contact information doesn't work, so I tried it. So I just emailed my website person and said, hey, my link isn't working. But if you, I guess even my Instagram, Dr. Lynn Carey. You could message me there until my link is working. But you can find me there on those places.
Well, it's always a pleasure to have you come on to the Network of Awareness. I know this won't be the last time you come here. This is your third time. So you're becoming what do they call it? A staple inside of the Network of Awareness. And I know that a lot of people have told me that they really appreciate your information and your presence and just your spirit and what you bring to the show. So thank you again. And stick around for a second. I'm just going to close the show out with a quick little monologue to music. So let me just do that real quick. So everybody, if you want more information about what Dr. Lynn Carey's doing, and she's over here in Florida, where I'm at as well, not in the same area, but she is in the Sunshine State. And, a lot of good things to come. So we're going to have a comeback and, just stick around for just one moment here. All right, people. So let's see here. That was Dr. Lynn Carey, and first guest. We are extensions of all that is. And the way that Dr. Lynn Carey ended about the gray state is exactly what we are, is that extension of all that is, and understanding that we are connected to everything. Everything is a part of us and we're a part of it. There is no difference. We're not separate, because that's where the ego creeps in. And the ego can make you think that you're something separate when you're really just connected to everything that is and everything that is and ever will be. So with that being said, people, I want to thank you for tuning into this broadcast of the Network of Awareness. And let's get some of our theme music in here, The Awakening. Courtesy of Brother Lincoln. So, when you live in the present, there is always an opportunity for a new beginning. So start your new beginning today and take on the opportunities that are being given to you and revealed to you in your daily life. And don't look for the light at the end of the tunnel, because the light is and always will be within you. So light up the tunnel and find your way through the darkness. This is Aura the Informationalist with my guest, Dr. Lynn Carey, saying peace, love, and light, and may the force of the Most High stay and always be with you. Peace.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Network of Awareness. If you would like to join or find out more about our show, please subscribe and follow us at networkofawareness.com or your favorite podcast listening platforms. If you would like for us to discuss any specific topic you would like to listen to, leave us a message on our website, or you can directly email us at orra@networkofawareness.com. Now, tune in to one of the fastest growing podcast shows on social, spiritual, and self-awareness. With that being said, people, living in the present, being directed by what's given in the hour-long sessions, mind-blowing confessions of improvement that needs checking. Welcome it all is. Tuning out. Peace and blessings.